the grand theater of international trade, where nations dance delicately between cooperation and competition. A significant chapter unfolded on the northern borders of North America. Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada, standing before the press on Parliament Hill, announced a strategic decision that would reshape the economic relationship between two of the world's closest neighbors. Beginning September 1st, Canada would remove its 25% retaliatory tariffs on a wide array of American goods, marking a pivotal moment in what had become an increasingly complex trade dispute. The products affected by this decision tell the story of everyday commerce between nations. Items that fill the shelves of grocery stores, appliance showrooms, and wine shops across Canada. Orange juice from Florida's sun-drenched groves, creamy peanut butter from American processing plants, bottles of wine from California's renowned vineyards, and household appliances manufactured in factories across the United States, all would soon flow more freely across the 49th parallel. These are not merely commodities, but symbols of the interconnected lives and economies that span the world's longest undefended border. However, like a chess player who moves carefully while protecting key positions, Canada chose to maintain its protective stance on three critical sectors: steel, the backbone of construction and infrastructure; aluminum, essential for everything from aircraft to beverage cans; and automobiles, representing one of North America's most integrated manufacturing networks, would continue to face Canadian tariffs. These strategic exemptions reflect Canada's determination to protect its industrial heartland and manufacturing jobs, even as it extends an olive branch in other areas. The genesis of this trade conflict can be traced back to the summer months, when tensions escalated dramatically. On July 31st, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that sent shockwaves through Canadian boardrooms and government offices. The order raised tariffs on certain Canadian goods to a staggering 35%, effective immediately at 1 minute past midnight on August 1st. This was not merely an economic measure, but a diplomatic statement wrapped in the language of trade policy. The Trump administration justified this dramatic escalation by pointing to two primary concerns that had been simmering beneath the surface of United States-Canada relations. First, the ongoing crisis of fentanyl trafficking, a deadly synthetic opioid that has claimed hundreds of thousands of American lives, with some supply chains originating from or passing through Canadian territory. Second, Canada's decision earlier in the year to impose its own retaliatory tariffs, creating what economists call a tit-for-tat cycle that can spiral beyond anyone's control. Understanding the mechanics of this trade dispute requires grasping the concept of retaliatory tariffs, which function like economic mirror responses in international trade. When one country imposes tariffs on another's goods, the affected nation often responds by imposing its own tariffs on the original aggressor's products. This creates a cascading effect where consumers in both countries ultimately pay higher prices, while businesses struggle with disrupted supply chains and reduced competitiveness. The Canadian government had in fact imposed retaliatory tariffs on American goods 3 separate times since this trade war began, affecting an enormous $60 billion worth of United States consumer goods. Each round of tariffs represented not just economic policy, but political messaging, signaling Canada's unwillingness to accept what it viewed as unfair trade practices without response. These measures included additional tariffs specifically targeting American automobiles, striking at one of the most integrated sectors of the North American economy. Central to understanding this entire dispute is the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, commonly known by its acronym CUSMA in Canada, or USMCA in the United States. This trilateral trade deal, which replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, was designed to govern commerce between the three nations with specific rules, exemptions, and dispute resolution mechanisms. The 35% tariff rate imposed by the Trump administration cleverly applied only to goods not covered by this agreement, exploiting gaps in the trade framework. Prime Minister Carney's decision to remove tariffs on CUSMA-compliant goods represents what diplomatic experts call tactical repositioning. By aligning Canada's tariff structure with the trade agreement's provisions, Carney demonstrated respect for the negotiated framework while potentially removing one of President Trump's justifications for the punitive measures. This move required considerable political courage, as it opened Carney to criticism from opposition parties and trade hawks, who viewed it as capitulation. The political reaction was swift and predictable. illustrating the challenging balance that leaders must strike between domestic political pressures and international diplomacy. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, sensing an opportunity to attack the governing party's credibility, declared that Carney had broken his biggest election campaign promise. However, Poilievre also stated his objective of having all tariffs removed, revealing the complex political calculations at play when economic policy intersects with electoral politics. President Trump's response to Canada's gesture was notably measured, perhaps reflecting the complex relationship between the two leaders and their nations. When asked about the Canadian decision, Trump simply stated, "We want to be very good to Canada," a diplomatic phrase that suggested potential openness to further de-escalation. Such carefully chosen words in international relations often signal broader intentions without creating binding commitments. The broader regional implications of this trade dispute extend far beyond the bilateral relationship between Canada and the United States. Prime Minister Carney's planned visit to Mexico in September to meet with President Claudia Sheinbaum represents an effort to coordinate responses among the three CUSMA partners. Mexico, like Canada, has found itself navigating the choppy waters of trade relations with the Trump administration, and both countries recognize that their individual negotiations with the United States are strengthened by coordination and mutual support. This trade episode also illuminates the delicate preparation process for the scheduled review of the Free Trade Agreement, a provision built into CUSMA that requires the three nations to assess and potentially renegotiate the deal's terms. Such reviews are never merely technical exercises, but opportunities for each country to pursue revised terms that better serve their economic and political interests. The current trade tensions provide important context for these upcoming negotiations. The human cost of trade disputes often gets lost in discussions of percentages, tariff rates, and diplomatic maneuvering. But real families and communities bear the consequences of these policy decisions. Canadian consumers have faced higher prices on American goods due to the retaliatory tariffs, while American exporters have seen their products become less competitive in Canadian markets. Small business owners on both sides of the border, who depend on integrated supply chains and predictable trade flows, have been forced to adapt to rapidly changing conditions beyond their control. Looking ahead, this latest development represents neither the end of trade tensions nor a complete resolution of the underlying issues that sparked the dispute. Instead, it marks a strategic pause, a diplomatic breathing space that could either provide the foundation for broader de-escalation or simply postpone more difficult negotiations until later. The success of Carney's gambit will ultimately be measured not just in trade flows and economic statistics, but in whether it creates the political space necessary for both countries to address their legitimate concerns, while preserving the economic integration that has benefited millions of people on both sides of the world's longest peaceful border. As we continue to witness these pivotal moments in North American trade relations unfold, it becomes clear that understanding these complex diplomatic maneuvers is more important than ever for citizens on both sides of the border. The decisions made in the coming months will shape not only the economic landscape, but also the political relationships that define our continental partnership. Stay informed, stay engaged, and remember that these are not merely abstract policy discussions, but developments that will directly impact the prices you pay, the jobs available in your community, and the broader prosperity of our interconnected economies. Thank you for joining us on West is Best for this deep dive into Canada's strategic trade decision. If you found this analysis helpful in understanding the intricate world of international commerce and diplomacy, please consider subscribing to our channel for more insightful coverage of the stories that matter most. Hit that notification bell, share this video with anyone who might benefit from understanding these crucial developments, and let us know in the comments what aspects of this trade saga you would like us to explore further. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and remember that staying informed is the first step toward shaping the future we all want to see.